Let's get our next guest. Austin Pennington is a trial attorney, our guest on 710 KURV. Austin, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it. Now, you look at something like this. What comes to mind when it comes to this police union filing a lawsuit over these regulations restricting size of officers' waistlines?
Well, there's a lot of things that come to mind, but I think if you're going to dive into the legal side of things, you really got to ask, does this specific restriction actually address the problem that they're concerned about, right? So it makes sense. We obviously want our officers to be in shape. We want our officers to be able to chase down suspects, to protect and cover their partners' backs. But we've got to ask, okay, is the waistline itself, is that really addressing the problem? Is that really a fix-all? Because in my opinion, it's not.
Yeah. So do
well,
you
I would
think...
be surprised if it was your opinion, given that you're suing over it. Pardon me. Well,
because it's true, Davey. Like what I just said earlier. Someone's waist size or waistline does not determine their level of fitness. It also depends, like on you're right there, how tall they are. You know, any other factor. So, does the Texas Police Union have something working for them in this lawsuit?
I think they do, because when you start making regulations like that, there has to be some form of rational basis to support the discriminatory regulation you're putting into play. And so the police force, they're rationally going to say, well, we have to have in-shape police officers. But if you really think about it, having certain fitness tests or certain requirements that have to do with your actual physical fitness makes far more sense than just making an arbitrary number based on measurements that is cookie cutter and probably wouldn't translate to an accurate reading across different sample sizes.
I mean, if they wanted to do something, or if they wanted to push healthier decisions on their officers and DPS troopers, why not do something with their BMI, which is their body mass index? Because everybody is different.
Right. Absolutely. That's part of it. I've also read where some police departments are offering incentive plans, much like we see a lot of corporate companies use, where they offer wellness plans and incentives for participating in things that are going to make you healthier. And if that's the real concern, then let's figure out what actually is an accurate measure of whether or not our officers are physically fit enough to perform their duties.
Well, again, this is Davis Rankin. What does, if I say, what does the law require now? I guess what is the circumstance now? What do they have to do? How is it measured? What kind of disciplinary history do they have?
Well, if you're looking at specifically to the officers who are being tested or being evaluated, every department's different. NYPD, they have zero restrictions or ramifications for their officers after they graduate the academy, whereas there are other departments across the country that have certain restrictions or requirements that are their minimum standards. But again, it varies department by department. What the Constitution says and what our case law says is that if you're going to make a law that discriminates against certain qualities, and I'm not talking race or gender, but just a certain category, then you've got to have some kind of rational basis for that distinction. And so here, I do think that the waistline standard is going to have a hard time passing that test, because it's not as narrowly tailored as possible to make sure that it's achieving the goal it's intended to achieve.
I may be wrong. I thought that the plaintiff in this case was DPS troopers, Department of Public Safety troopers. Is that your plaintiff?
That's correct. So the plaintiff in this case is the union suing on behalf of the troopers, suing the DPS, saying you've made a law that's discriminatory and it's not designed in a way that's actually going to achieve its purpose, and it's actually going to harm people.
So this is just for DPS troopers, no police department across the state?
That's correct. Okay. But obviously the comparison between police departments and troopers, it's very similar, and so they go through some of the same things, face some of the same challenges. And so this issue that is right now focused on Texas state troopers could proliferate into other police departments across the country.
I didn't know the DPS troopers had a union, and I know there's the Texas. Well, never mind. I won't chase that rabbit. Do you know what they have to do now? Do they have a test they have to take yearly? I think they have to qualify once a year on their marksmanship and their handling of a firearm, I believe. What do they have to do physically to be able to keep their jobs now?
So, while I can't speak to the specifics of the troopers because the information as far as those standards hasn't been freely disseminated, there are a lot of departments that have certain tests, and I'm talking police departments again here, that have certain tests that have to do with medical evaluations to determine whether or not their officers can continue serving on the force. It's rare, though, that we're seeing actual physical fitness tests being implemented by these departments.
This would be a federal lawsuit, I'm assuming, not a state lawsuit?
Yes, it would. It would most likely be federal because of the state players that are at play here.
Well, what has the state's response been other than, take a flying leap, if they've even gone that far?
Well, at this point, it's a little early. The state hasn't filed a formal response yet, and so it'll be interesting to see what shape this takes and what kind of twists and turns this case goes down. Because, again, I do think it has large-scale ramifications for other police departments and other DPS units in different states across the country.
Do you know what the condition of the force is considered to be now? DPS, is there some literature or a statement by the leadership of the Department of Public Safety saying, we got a bunch of hog fat guys, what do they think is going on, or has it been stated publicly?
I haven't seen where it's been stated publicly. I have seen some anonymous comments made by other officers and other units across the country complaining about their specific colleagues, but I haven't seen anything specific to this case. So it would be interesting, and I'm sure we'll see some of that come out as this starts to gain more momentum and more publicity. But it is always interesting, especially if you end up with some anonymous opinions that may tend to be a little more true and more honest than what we're used to hearing about what the state of our troopers are.
Are the Texas Rangers, part of this lawsuit?
Not that I'm aware of. I believe it's focused solely on the
DPS,
Department of Public Safety and our state troopers.
Okay.
Austin, hopefully we'll have you on again soon because I know we have more questions.
Put you in good odor or bad odor if they catch you speeding? You know.
Well, I'm not sure at this point. Maybe if you run away and they're out of shape, you might be okay, but I'm not sure.
We'll leave it there, Austin. Thank you so much for joining us. Hopefully we'll have you on again soon because I know we have many more questions. It's Austin Pennington. He's a trial attorney and our guest on 710 KURV.